Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to play detective. We're diving into one of the most brilliant periods in all of human history, but we're not just listing off inventions. Nope, we are on the hunt for the secret, surprising, and almost accidental chain of events that made it all possible.
You hear about all the incredible stuff that came out of this era. We're talking algebra, the scientific method, things that literally run our world today. But the real question, the one that's actually useful to us now, is why? Why then? Why there? So let's peel back the layers of history and find the hidden causes, that perfect storm of events that lit the fuse on this incredible explosion of discovery. All right, first things first, we have to kind of reset our mental map of history because the story of Western civilization that most of us learned in school, it tends to leave out some pretty gigantic, important parts. It creates this idea that civilization started in the Middle East and then, just packed its bags and left for Europe. But what if we look at it this way? Suddenly you see something pretty amazing. It's not a bunch of separate, disconnected civilizations. It's actually a single, continuous story. And the Islamic Golden Age, it stops looking like some random outlier and starts looking exactly like what it was. The fourth major chapter in a saga that began and was repeatedly centered right there in the Middle East. Okay, so our detective story really kicks off way back in the 3rd century AD. You've got two rival superpowers, Rome and Persia. And they make two totally different choices that are going to echo for 1,000 years. It's a story of preservation versus destruction, and it all starts in Rome. So on one side, you have the late Roman Empire, and it starts to turn on itself. It begins to systematically tear down its own intellectual heritage. In 391, Christianity becomes the only legal religion. Just 1 year later, a mob burns the Great Library of Alexandria. I mean, the single greatest collection of knowledge in the entire ancient world just gone. And the dominoes keep falling. Famous schools of philosophy shut down one after another. The lights were quite literally going out all across the Roman world. Meanwhile, over in Persia, a completely different story is playing out. In 260 AD, the Persian emperor Shapur I crushes a Roman army and captures their emperor Valerian. But get this, instead of killing him, Shapur builds him a little palace and turns him into a tourist attraction. He let people come and gawk at a real-life Roman emperor. And that story just perfectly illustrates Persia's whole approach. Shapur wasn't just a military guy. He was jealous. He was jealous of Rome's great library, so he decided, fine, I'll build my own, and it'll be even better. And he did. He founded the Academy of Gunti Shapur. He sent his people out to collect texts from Greece, India, everywhere. So when Rome started kicking out its best and brightest scholars, where do you think they went with all their precious books? Yep, they found a sanctuary at Gundi Shapur, a safe haven for the very knowledge Rome was trying to erase. So for hundreds of years, Gundi Shapur is basically a time capsule, just holding on to the world's knowledge. Then, the next huge domino falls. A new power, the Arabs, explodes onto the scene, and their conquests bring these two totally opposite legacies, Rome's decay and Persia's preservation, smack together under the roof of one single massive new empire. So the early Arab Empire inherited these two competing systems, the old Roman way of doing things in Syria and the Persian way in Iraq. For about 100 years, the Roman-influenced guys, the Umayyads, were in charge. But that all changes with something called the Abbasid Revolution. And this wasn't just swapping one king for another. This was a massive cultural shift. Power moves to Baghdad, and suddenly, that Persian tradition of valuing and seeking out knowledge is in the driver's seat. And this right here, this is the crucial point. This is the perfect storm. I mean, think about it. You needed every single one of these things to happen. First, the knowledge had to be saved in that time capsule at Gundi Shapur. Second, the conquerors, the Arabs, had to be humble enough not to just burn it all down, which they were. And finally, you needed the right leaders, the Abbasids, who didn't just put up with this old knowledge but were hungry for it. They wanted to unlock it, translate it, and build on it. If you take away even one of those steps, the Golden Age just doesn't happen. It's that simple. So with the treasure chest of Gundi Shapur finally thrown open, a brand new age of discovery just erupts. The world was flooded with innovations that would eventually make their way back to a Europe that had almost completely forgotten them. And the crazy thing is, this wasn't the work of just one people. It was a multicultural explosion. You had Persian, Arab, Christian, and Jewish scholars all working together, translating the old texts, and then just leaping miles beyond them. A Persian mathematician, al-Khwarizmi, gives us the very language of computers with algebra and algorithm. Ibn al-Haytham develops the scientific method itself, the process that drives all science today. And Ibn Sina, just by reading Plato, describes the Big Bang 1,000 years before we had the physics to prove it. And just to give you a sense of how big this leap was, let's just take one guy. The physicist Ibn al-Haytham was already working out the principles of calculus 600 years before Isaac Newton supposedly invented it in Europe. Let that sink in. 600 years.
So how in the world did all this advanced thinking get back to a Europe that was still kind of stuck in the Dark Ages? Well, it wasn't overnight. It trickled back through three main channels. As Christian kingdoms reconquered Spain, they didn't just get castles, they got libraries full of priceless knowledge. In Sicily, you had Norman kings who basically became huge fans of Arab culture. And of course, in Venice, the merchant ships weren't just carrying spices, they were carrying world-changing ideas. So you can basically map out the whole journey. It's like a 1,000-year-long relay race of knowledge. The baton was preserved in Persia, it was advanced like crazy in Baghdad, then passed on through Spain and Sicily, and finally, it became the fuel that ignited the European Renaissance. You know, the word Renaissance literally means rebirth. But a rebirth of what? Of the classical world of Greece and Rome. But as Dr. Casagranda points out, how do you do that when you burned all your own copies? The answer was you had to get your hands on the manuscripts that the Arabs had saved. So the rebirth of Europe wasn't some miracle. It was a direct inheritance, only made possible because that knowledge had been saved, nurtured, and massively expanded somewhere else. So this whole incredible story of preservation beating destruction and collaboration beating dogma, it basically gives us a recipe. The ingredients for a golden age seem to be you need to respect existing knowledge, you need the humility to learn from other cultures, and you need leaders who actually invest in discovery. It worked then. The real question for us is, are we using that recipe today?